Detroit Lions fans, welcome into the Detroit Den 313, or the Den as we call it, where you could just sit back, talk some ball with your friends. Ladies, gentlemen, everyone's welcome here at the Detroit Den 313. I got to give a shout out to the Detroit Times. I believe that's where I saw this episode, or gave me this idea for this episode. It asked a very a good question about Jared Goff. Jared Goff, the best Detroit Lions quarterback I think we've ever had, at least in my lifetime. If you're an old timer, no disrespect, but you guys could probably name off some quarterbacks who might have been a little bit better. But for me, since I've been watching football for close to 30 years now, Jared Goff has been the most accomplished Detroit Lions quarterback that I have ever seen. You can't go anywhere without Jared Goff chants breaking out. I think I just saw, I'm not a diehard country music fan. I like a little bit, but Zach Bryan, I believe his name was in Detroit last week, and Jared Goff chants broke out. I think I saw the same thing from a Dave Matthews concert just a couple days ago, maybe even yesterday. I can't remember when that was, but everywhere you go in the city of Detroit, Red Wings games, wrestling events, anywhere you go, the draft, Jared Goff chants breakout. That's our guy. We rock with JG. He's our quarterback. No disrespect to Matthew Stafford. Jared Goff won us a playoff game, won us 2 playoff games, almost took us to a Super Bowl. So I believe I was on Twitter the other day, and I should have screenshotted it to give you guys a proper shout out. I apologize if I got it wrong. I believe it was the Detroit Times. They sound like a newspaper, but I don't think they are. Asked the question about JG, Jared Goff. Can he win the MVP of the NFL? It's going to be tough. And for me to answer that question, for me to look into the future, I have to go back and I have to look at the past. So what has been Jared Goff's best season so far? I think it was in 2018. I'm checking my notes here, where he started all 16 games, threw 32 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, almost 4,700 yards, 4,688. 2018. Who won the MVP that year? It was Patrick Mahomes. I don't know. You guys might have heard about him. So I did a little digging. I went to go look at the 2018 MVP voting to see if Jared Goff was even mentioned, even being thought about, because I think those are pretty solid numbers. Now, they're not crazy. 32-12, 4,600 yards. Not bad. It's a good season. It's a really good season. Patrick Mahomes absolutely lit it up that year. He had 50 touchdowns. Second place was Drew Brees with 32 touchdowns, and I think he had 4 or 5 interceptions, so his ratio was better. So same amount of touchdowns, way less interceptions. Jared Goff wasn't even mentioned. Wasn't even a thought. It really just came down to those two, Brees and Mahomes. So I did a little bit more digging. I do some homework. Jared Goff also was not even mentioned in NFL Offensive Player of the Year. Wasn't even in the top 5. His teammate was Todd Gurley that year, along with DeAndre Hopkins, a wide receiver, Drew Brees also, Patrick Mahomes, and I can't remember who the 5th player was, but it doesn't matter. Jared Goff wasn't even mentioned. So going back to the past, now we got to look toward the future. I have 3 important questions for you guys. I want you guys to answer in the comments. Number one question that I have: does Jared Goff have the weapons around him to win the NFL MVP? Best offensive line, check. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Laporta, Jameson Williams, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Jahmyr Gibbs. I think that there's obviously some other weapons, Khalif Raymond, some others, Brock Wright. Like I understand that there's other weapons, but those are the main 5 guys that I'll really mention that are going to be pivotal in Jared Goff possibly winning this MVP behind the best offensive line. St. Brown, Laporta both had double-digit touchdowns last year, so Jameson Williams, I think he's going to see an increase in production. We kind of started to see him really start to shine last year, especially in that NFC Championship game. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I think we're going to get some more touches there. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have a bigger piece of the pie when it comes to the passing game, I think. So Jared Goff, does he have the weapons around him to win the MVP? Absolutely. Offensive line is ranked number 1 from what I've seen from a lot of sites who do rankings, PFF and all that. St. Brown is a top 5 wide receiver. Sam Laporta is a top 5 tight end. Jameson Williams, I think, is going to have a breakout year. If we can get him the ball in the passing game, if we're talking MVP, he has to get some more receptions, more receiving touchdowns. But I personally don't give a shit. Just get the ball to JMO in any type of way and let him be a weapon that we drafted him to be. Donovan Peoples-Jones, big body receiver, like 6'2", 200-some pounds. I think we'll see a lot of red zone targets for him, some jump balls. So I think absolutely Jared Goff does have the weapons. And what makes Jared Goff so great is You have to build a team around him. Now, he's not the most athletic quarterback. He's never going to wow you with his legs, even though small chance from section 139, when he breaks off a 4 or 5 yarder, you will hear a small roar of Jared Vick from section 139. If you guys get where I'm going with that, it's me. That's where I sit. That's where my tickets are. So the question, does he have the weapons around him? Absolutely. 100% yes. I can't think of a quarterback that has more weapons around them. The only other person that really kind of comes to mind would be Brock Purdy, who Brock Purdy was actually mentioned in the MVP race last year. And that's not even in my notes. I just remembered that. So does he have the weapons? Yes. That's question one. Leave it in the comments. What do you think? Question number two. This is going to be really what, if we're talking MVP, what Jared Goff would have to do. What would Jared Goff's season stat line at the end of the year have to look like for him to win the MVP? This is my personal opinion. At a minimum, I think we're talking, I'm going to give you guys close to exact numbers. I think we're talking somewhere in the ballpark of 43 touchdowns, somewhere in there, 42, 43, 44. You have to be somewhere within there. I think the type of quarterback Jared Goff is he's going to make mistakes. It happens. It's the NFL. If we can keep his interceptions between 10 to 7, somewhere in that range, of 42, 43, 44 touchdowns with, let's meet in the middle and call it 8 interceptions, that's a pretty damn good ratio. Really, really damn good. Yardage, I think we're going to have to look at about 4,900 yards. I'm trying to keep this realistic. Like, I'm not going out there and saying Jared Goff's going to throw for 5,800 yards and 60 touchdowns and only have 2 interceptions. I feel like my stat line is pretty reasonable given the weapons that I just named. With that offensive line, he's going to have time to throw. He's good at going through his progressions. He's good at throwing the ball in tight windows, and he's very, very good at dissecting coverage. Sometimes when he gets pressured, that's when he has a little trouble. So I don't feel like my stat line for his season to win the MVP is anything crazy. 43 touchdowns, let's call it 42, 43, 8 interceptions, somewhere in there, and 4,900 yards. I feel like that's a reasonable stat line, and that could at least get him into the conversation, into the discussion for winning MVP. I don't think I'm being unreasonable. Leave it in the comments. Let me know how you feel and what your stat line is for him to win this trophy. Question number 3. What would kill Jared Goff's chances at winning the trophy, the MVP trophy? I think the only thing that's going to hurt it the most is that the Detroit Lions are very, very run heavy. Now, we're not overly run heavy. Like, I compare them to the Michigan Wolverines team that just would absolutely run the ball down your throat. We're not that type of run heavy team, but we do have Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, and we have them so that we can take pressure off of Jared Goff to avoid those mistakes I was talking about behind the best offensive line that I've already talked about. So I think that could really hinder his run at an MVP. And I'm going to get to how I feel about that in just a second. But Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, we've talked about them both having 1,000 yards rushing, and we've talked about Jahmyr Gibbs having 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving. So it's going to be tough when you're running the ball that much. If we want 2 running backs to have over 1,000 yards, that hasn't been done in, I don't know how long. Maybe someone else can leave that in the comments. I should have looked that up. It just came to my mind. Like, have we ever had 2 running backs get over 1,000 yards in the NFL? I'm not sure. Leave it in the comments. Let me know. I didn't do the homework on that one, but I also wasn't prepared to talk about that. So I think that's what could kill Jared Goff's chances at being the MVP. We're a run-heavy team. Best offensive line in football, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. And then another thing kind of to piggyback off of that is when we get inside the 10, that's where we really want to run the football. We really want to give the ball to David Montgomery, who's tough to tackle behind the line. It's tough to get behind our line to make a tackle for a loss. So David Montgomery inside the 10, that's where he kind of pounds and pounds and pounds and just beats people down, gets in that end zone. So unless Jared Goff's bombing it out, kind of like a, I don't know, 1999, year 2000, Kurt Warner, just greatest show on turf. I don't know, because once we really get closer to that end zone, I know that the Detroit Lions want to put the hands in the ball of our running backs. I'll let them make some plays. I'm not saying that we don't get some short touchdowns. Like, it happens, but you really want to just lean on that offensive line a little bit. So I think our 2 running backs could really take away from that MVP chance. So those are my 3 questions for you guys. Leave it in the comments. And my conclusion, listen, I personally do not give a shit if Jared Goff wins an MVP. I know he's the type of guy who's humble enough to not care about the MVP. He wants a Super Bowl trophy, that Super Bowl ring. That's more important to him. I truly believe it. His teammates, the city of Detroit. If he wins the MVP, great, fantastic. I personally don't care, but I did think it was a question. And the MVP trophy's kind of just been a quarterback's award for the most part. So obviously JG, he plays quarterback. So we have to talk about it. And I think he has the best weapons around him with the best offensive line. But Ben Johnson's offense is very creative. I don't know. Ben Johnson's also kind of a dark horse for maybe how he could win this thing. But I give it about a 20 to 25% chance of actually happening. I just thought it was a fun little topic to talk about, guys. Leave it in the comments. Let me know how you feel about our guy, Jared Goff. I'll be back later with another show.